So then we are back with the more understandings from the time of the second tabernacle services, where we find the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Israelic lineage. So then we can understand the time of the end. As per Yeshayahu the prophet, we find layers of understanding of the spring feast, the autumn feast, and also the returning of the cities of the Machiach laid waste for many centuries. As we read then Yeshayahu the prophet, we find then the layer regarding then the 61st chapter of Yeshayahu being very true, and then also many links with Yeshayahu and also Daniel, the 11th chapter. We find then many new interesting understandings as far as what's going on in the world, and came out a very fresh information from China, where then Mr. Sisi from Egypt visited China, and they obviously came up with some deals extremely important for the future of the world's trade. So then, it was explained many times before. When we read then Daniel the 11th chapter, we must understand there is then the kingdom of the north, the Soviet Union, kingdom of the south, Africa, and kingdom of the east, then China. China leads the world's market. China has more than 50% of the world's trade, and then obviously China is linking up the rest of the world. So then, as Egypt visited then China, some of the deals they had obviously spoke of, it is very exciting because it relates with the trade and also the Silk Road, or then the centuries old route that the old traders then obviously had back then in ancient times. So it was explained before many times in Daniel the 11th chapter, then China linking up with the world and linking up also with Egypt. It was said before, surely was. And not only this, but then you find it's a perfect time for the Soviet Union then to join China and Egypt. So then the arms that Egypt must have to control and secure the area must be then given. So then, as we read then Daniel the 11th chapter, it was also explained it's a military document because it involves fighting and combat and many people dying. So then, as far as we can read from this document, for instance, 8th and 9th verse explains then the relationship of Egypt and also the sons of Ishmael. But not only this, Egypt is also working with Qatar, and those are also the sons of Ishmael, and they must come up with a deal of their own. So then Egypt becomes the center point of this very important pivotal point prior of then marching south for combat. At this point in time, it's very fresh yet. There are some information who are coming up from the net. But as we read then the excitement of the 11th chapter of Daniel, it is extremely important. And it is so exciting then reading this chapter because it gives us the exacting points where then armies and movements of armies are going to start taking place. As it was said before, at this point in time there are only deals making amongst these nations, but then ISIL is obviously working very hard on their side, and then at some point they're going to reach Egypt. That's where then they're going to make their headquarters, and then should be coming up the next few months. But not only this, China is also linking its system with Egypt, and Egypt is linking its system with China and also with the sons of Ishmael, thus then restoring the Silk Road. So it's a very important time in our history where then you are obviously finding a whole lot more information when we link Daniel and then also with Yeshayahu and sections of Galah, and then pointing this structure then taking place in adjusting itself until then these countries are ready for combat. So then, not only this, we read these understandings on paper, and at the same time we read then the prophecies. Now comes the events of these, because not only explains the formation of these armies, but explains also the involvement of Congo, then the involvement of Cuba, and these are involved with the Soviet Union. And at the moment, only the Soviets are a bit far behind. They got entangled themselves with their own economy, and they kind of lost the understanding of what they should be doing in order to release themselves from their troubles. And the situation is, Mr. Putin from the Soviet Union must make a deal with Egypt, while then China is involved with it. This is a perfect time for then the Soviets to do their part of this deal, because it explains then Egypt is standing up from the Kingdom of the North. So the military might of Egypt, most of them are coming then from the Soviet Union, the Kingdom of the North. So at some point in time, Mr. Putin is going to visit with Egypt and going to give them more arms, either by giving and charging them later, or some sort of a deal involving China in exchange for energy. But Egypt must receive whatsoever is required to make sure then Egypt is secured. And then later on, Egypt makes a deal then with ISIL. But a few fights are going to take place, so many people are going to die. So these events are absolutely described in detail in Daniel the 11th chapter. So at this point in time, the information is coming in. It's very, in quote, raw. But the events are taking place, and we can watch the events coming together. So it's a great time in our history. We can understand where then Northern Africa and Egypt are playing a grander part in this section of the Holy Instructions. So please stay tuned, much more coming up.